Squid Game just released its official Season 3 trailer, and I have a lot to say about what this tells us for the next season, from the fates of some players, to the events of games 4 and 5, all the way to Juno's infiltration of the island. The wait is up, here's what I got. One of the first scenes we see is a handful of players approaching the game that was foreshadowed during the mid-credits scene at the end of Season 2. Now, we have more information. Here's what I noticed. All players shown walking to the game have blue circles, indicating that they're from the group that chose to continue playing throughout the second season. Now, they're obviously not the only ones playing this game, and it's possible that the Red X players like Giyun took on the 5th game in a different cohort or something, as Game 5 is an important elimination event that is probably meant to reduce the remaining players count all the way down to a single-digit number, as we've seen in Season 1. With regards to player counts, Season 1's Game 4 began with exactly 39 players, ending up with 17. Then another player died, and then Game 5 started with 16 players, reducing all the way down to 3 people walking out the other end of the bridge. Thanks to Juno and the archives, we know that there's only ever one winner of the Squid Games each year, so it's important that each of the later games have some sort of principal factor that gives it a high minimum death count. We saw that in Season 1 for both Tug of War and Marbles, where at least half of the players wouldn't survive, and then again in Season 2, where the last round of Mingle gave us a maximum of 100 survivors. Now though, exactly 58 players are confirmed to be alive for this year's 4th game, and if I were to guess, having 2 distinct teams probably means that at least half of the players won't live until the end. But not all deaths will be on the same team. By the looks of it, there seems to be 10 blue circle players entering the game hall in this clip. However, we cannot see the face of player 124, better known as Thanos' right-hand man. Player 124 is later seen looking down at the flowery landscape though, so he realistically should be somewhere in the area with the rest of the circle team, which would make the amount of blue survivors about 11. Either way, let's assume that the 10 to 12 players seen here are exactly half of the remaining players altogether, if there's hypothetically an equal amount of Red X players. If that is the case, there's 20 to 24 people at the start of Game 5, so it's very likely to be a mass elimination event. But again, it would have to be anyways to create a finale game that could bring it down to 1 player, assuming the survivors have not yet voted to quit playing. Looking back at the 5th game again, we know that obviously, this game is a complete different game than the 4th, and it is not any sort of later on ending part of the 4th game due to the collective facts that no one is wearing colored vests, and the announcing voice says,
잠시 후 게임을 시작하겠습니다.
as they enter the room. I think it's also important to note that within the 5th game, the players all have fear in their eyes, and even player 100 has some sort of doubtful look, whereas that was not the general expression in other games like Mingle. Over there, they all seem to keep their composure and have more focused looks on their faces. And returning to the earlier statement, within the teaser, Game 5 only shows us scenes with blue circle players, including 124 looking down over the side, player 100 and his companions entering the game hall, and blurry shots of blue patches in the background characters. I do have 2 unconfirmed statements against that though. In this shot, we see Yoon saying, "What are you doing?" where he's not wearing the Game 4 vest, and the fence behind him just perfectly matches the Game 5 fence. And then there's also this scene between MG Coin and Prego, but it doesn't really show them like doing anything too much, but it's safe to say they make it to Game 5, I think. But here's our confirmed scene of Red X players in Game 5. There's a very quick pan across the flowery ground showing the deceased players who are noticeably blurred in this scene, and of the 5 players on scene, there's exactly 1 frame that shows this player who has a Red X on their chest. So this of course confirms that the Red X players are playing this game in the exact same room, but there's still many other details we just don't have. Granted, we know that this game involves crossing the railroad bridge without getting swept by the jump rope and killed, and similar to Season 1's Game 5, fall damage is what eliminates all of its players. What we don't know, however, is if the game has a time limit or other objectives, the order in which the players cross the bridge, if the order of crossing the bridge matters, and we also just don't see any of the main characters in this game hall besides players 100 and 124. I think it's also important to mention that, of the blue circle characters we're familiar with, players 44 and 226 do not make appearances in the 5th game. With that being said, it might be valid to assume that they are both eliminated during or after Game 4, with the possibility of player 44's death being reinforced with this scene of her pounding on the door. It looks like a lot more panic than anger, as though her life is on the line if she doesn't get through this door. You know where else we saw this? Mingle! And red light, green light. Ultimately, I think that the 4th game seals the fate of the shaman and she will not be continuing into the 5th game. As for the rest of her cult, I'd assume that most of them also get bullets around that time. We also saw more scenes of the mentally destroyed Gyun asking the guards why they didn't just kill him, almost as if he wanted to die. Now, the answer to Gyun's question is quite simple. The entire reason he returned to the island in season 2 is because he wanted to prove the frontman wrong and he wanted to be the hero, to be the one who would break the psychological madness behind the games and end it forever.
내가 보여줄게. 세상이 너희들이 원하는 대로만 움직이진 않는다는 걸.
Keeping Gyun alive lets him witness that he was wrong, all while the greed of mankind leads to more and more deaths. In other words, this season is about to be a whole lot darker than the rest of the show that we're familiar with. Now, we also got quite a bit more info on the 4th game, primarily from the showcase of how much of a maze this arena is. Based off of the Bloody Player 120 and the fight she got in one of the scenes, it's clear that violence of sorts is permitted in this game. Many viewers are making speculations of what the game's objective will actually be between red versus blue, and honestly, it just seems as though the blue team has a destination in which they're trying to reach within the game hall, while the red team is trying to either kill a blue player or stop them, which would lead to the loser's elimination. There's also this scene I find intriguing, as we see player 222, or the pregnant woman, wearing a blue vest, despite being shown with a red ball on one of the teaser images released earlier. And I know I said otherwise in my review of the initial teaser, but now I do think that player 7 unfortunately does not make it out alive. In the past, his mother used to beg the other players to vote to leave, but now in the trailer, her mindset changed from that to begging the staff to stop the whole thing. Also, her son is not very present in the trailer itself, and that's probably because he's in one of those cute looking present things. Sad. As we approach the end, when it shows Gyun in his player 456 tux, it immediately informs us that at some point in the season, In-ho will reveal his true identity to Gi-hoon, seeing if he destroyed his faith in humanity. Now, I have a lot of reasons to believe that this scene takes place directly after Game 5, but chronologically, I think that it will be before the scheduled 6th game. I'm not necessarily saying that there will be a 6th and final game in the season at all, but I wholeheartedly believe that this scene happens directly before the 6th game is scheduled to happen. Let's look at the details. Gi-hoon is in the exact suit that was provided by the staff to commend the 3 survivors of 5 games in season 1. That detail is obvious. Now, given that Gi-hoon is in the frontman's quarters, it's definitely possible that some viewers might just believe that he's up there because he won all of the games again. But I'll remind you, season 1's final game did not leave his suit in good condition by the time it was done. Now, I'm not saying that he needs to have another knife fight in the rain, but it's still safe to assume that any game he would play would easily destroy the cleanliness of the suit, especially if it was Squid Game. There's also the fact that Gi-hoon's suit has a red X stitched onto it, indicating that he voted to end the games after the 5th game. If the suit was provided to him at any point later than that, there would be no reason for them to put an X on his suit. Also, if the frontman, who Gi-hoon watched shoot Jung-bae, reveals abruptly that all along he was player 1, that would mentally tear him apart and be an extreme psychological weapon against Gi-hoon, and then the frontman would just send him into game 6 with no more will to live. It would be the perfect weapon. In-ho is a mastermind at mentally destroying people, as we've seen a lot in the trailers and the ending of season 2 itself. I don't really know if there will be a 6th game, or at least an entire 6th game. Given that it's the end of the show forever, and there's multiple characters with promising futures, as well as Junho who is actively raiding the operation, it wouldn't be all that bad to write in some sort of ending that doesn't consist of the 6th game being played and 455 of the initial players being killed. So to showcase some similarity, let's think of the Hunger Games. That is another series where a game is played with usually one victor, until the 2nd book and movie when there's characters with futures in the arena, where then the author just found a loophole in not killing off her entire cast. Either way, with just 2 scenes of Junho inside the facility in the teaser and trailer, it's hard to determine what power he actually has, especially since there has not been any indication as to whether he was actually with anyone else in all of this time. We also get just one brief scene with Junho in a black room with a nice dark marble doorframe behind him. Now, initially I thought this was the frontman's quarters, but upon further review I believe it's just more of a VIP lounge, and that this scene is only really showing that he makes it further along the VIP area of the island. This square pattern on the wall wasn't seen anywhere in season 1 when it showed Junho and his brother in the frontman's quarters, so realistically it was just VIP territory that he was at during this scene. Next up, I have this funny mention that I couldn't not talk about. Let's watch it again. Now, one of the biggest things that I don't think anyone's really talking about is this scene. We see guard 11 holding a gun without her mask, and that's about it. But one thing I immediately noticed was the pattern of the walls behind her. Does it look familiar? Maybe this will help. If you look around Juno here, this is the exact same wall pattern seen in the frontman's quarters. Did guard 11 make it all the way up there? And is she trying to assassinate the frontman or something? After seeing her possibly save player 246, I would love to see what her next intention is, and I'm sure that this clip here would certainly be meaningful towards it. One thing that kinda confuses me though is this timer. It doesn't really match the theme of either of the upcoming rooms. Granted, where this timer is probably has little significance, but I just wanted to point that out. I guess the last thing I wanted to say is that it concludes with the infamous line of the frontman revealing himself and asking Gi-yoon if he still has faith in people.
아직도 사람을 믿나?
This should answer Gi-yoon's question as to why they kept him alive. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed.